The 2018 Winter Olympics, officially the XXIII Olympic Winter Games and also known as PyeongChang 2018, were an international winter multi-sport event held between 9 and February 25, 2018 in PyeongChang, South Korea, with the opening rounds for certain events held on February 8, a day before the opening ceremony. PyeongChang was elected as the host city for the 2018 Winter Games at the 123rd IOC session in Durban, South Africa in July 2011. This marked the second time that South Korea had hosted the Olympic Games, as well as the first time it hosted the Winter Olympics. The 2018 Games marked the third time that an Asian country had hosted the Winter Olympics, after Sapporo 1972 and Nagano 1998, both in Japan. It was also the first Winter Olympics to be held in mainland Asia, and the first of 3 consecutive Olympic Games to be held in East Asia, preceding the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, Japan, and the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, China. The 2018 Games featured 102 events over 15 disciplines, a record number of events for the Winter Games. This is the first edition in Winter Olympic Games history to feature more than 100 medal events, 4 of which made their Olympic debut in 2018, big air snowboarding, mass start speed skating, mixed doubles curling, and mixed team alpine skiing. A total of 2,914 athletes from 93 teams competed, with the national debuts of Ecuador, Eritrea, Kosovo, Malaysia, Nigeria, and Singapore. After a state-sponsored doping program was exposed following the 2014 Winter Olympics, the Russian Olympic Committee was suspended, but selected athletes were allowed to compete neutrally under the special IOC designation of Olympic athletes from Russia, provided they could meet certain anti-doping requirements. North Korea agreed to participate in the Games in spite of tense relations with South Korea. The two nations paraded together at the opening ceremony as a unified Korea, and fielded a unified team in the women's ice hockey. South Korea ranked 7th overall at the 2018 Winter Games, with 5 gold medals and 17 overall medals. South Korea has traditionally been a country that won many medals in short track speed skating, but in this competition, it also won medals in skeleton racing, curling, and skiing. South Korea's Yoon Sung-bin won a gold medal in men's skeleton racing, the first Olympic gold ever won by Asia in the sledding event. Norway led the total medal tally with 39, followed by Germany at 31 and Canada at 29. Germany and Norway were tied for the highest number of gold medals, both winning 14. Bidding process. The bidding calendar was announced by the IOC in October 2012, with the application deadline set for November 14, 2013. The IOC Executive Board reviewed the bids from all applicant cities on July 7, 2014 and selected 3 cities, Oslo, Almaty, and Beijing, as the final candidates. Several cities withdrew their bids during the process, citing the high costs or the lack of local support and funding for hosting the Games. The Oslo bid, considered the clear frontrunner, was cancelled in the wake of a series of revelations about the International Olympic Committee's demands for luxury treatment of IOC members that strongly turned public opinion and the parliamentary majority against the bid. The city withdrew its application for government funding after a majority of the Norwegian parliament had stated their intention to decline the application. In the days before the decision, Norwegian media had revealed the IOC's diva-like demands for luxury treatment for the IOC members themselves, such as special lanes on all roads only to be used by IOC members and cocktail reception at the Royal Palace with drinks paid for by the royal family. The IOC also demanded control over all advertising space throughout Oslo to be used exclusively by IOC sponsors, something that is not possible in Norway because the government doesn't own or control all advertising space throughout Oslo and has no authority to give a foreign private organization exclusive use of a city and the private property within it. Several commentators pointed out that such demands were unheard of in a Western democracy. Slate described the IOC as a notoriously ridiculous organization run by grifters and hereditary aristocrats. Ole Berget, deputy minister in the finance ministry, said the IOC's arrogance was an argument held high by a lot of people. The country's largest newspaper commented that Norway is a rich country, but we don't want to spend money on wrong things, like satisfying the crazy demands from IOC apparatchiks. These insane demands that they should be treated like the King of Saudi Arabia just won't fly with the Norwegian public. Beijing was selected as the host city of the 2022 Winter Olympics after beating Almaty by 4 votes on July 31, 2015 at the 128th IOC session in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Development and preparation. Venues. In February 2021, Beijing announced that the 26 venues for these sports would be running on entirely renewable energy. There are 3 different clusters of venues designed and constructed for the 2022 Winter Olympics, each respectively known as the Beijing Zone, the Zhangjiago Zone, and the Yanging Zone. Beijing Zone. Zhangjiago Zone. Medals. The design for the Games medals was unveiled on October 26, 2021. The concept is based on traditional Chinese astronomy and astrology as the Games were held coinciding with the Chinese New Year festivities. The uniforms for medal presenters at medal ceremonies were unveiled in January 2022. The uniforms have been designed by the Central Academy of Fine Arts and Beijing Institute of Fashion Technology. Torch Relay. The torch relay started on October 18, 2021 in Greece. On October 20, 2021, it was announced that the local leg would start on February 2 and end on February 4, 2022 during the opening ceremonies. The local leg only visited 2 cities, Beijing and Zhangjiago. Activists staged a protest at the Olympic torch lighting ceremony in Greece. The inclusion and television appearance of Chi Fabio, a People's Liberation Army commander well known in China for his involvement in the 2020-2021 China-India skirmishes, as one of 1,200 torchbearers have been controversial, with India launching a diplomatic boycott of the Games as a result. Impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic resulted in changes in the qualifying process for curling and women's ice hockey due to the cancellation of tournaments in 2020. Qualification for curling was based on placement in the 2021 World Curling Championships and an Olympic qualification event that completed the field. The IIHF based its qualification for the women's tournament upon existing IIHF World Rankings, without holding the 2020 Women's World Championship. On September 29, 2021, the IOC announced biosecurity protocols for the Games. All athletes were required to remain within the biosecure bubble for the duration of their participation, which included daily COVID-19 testing, and only being allowed to travel to and from Games-related venues. Unless they are fully vaccinated or have a valid medical exemption, all athletes were required to quarantine for 21 days upon their arrival. Mirroring a protocol adopted for the 2020 Summer Olympics before they were moved behind closed doors, the IOC also announced that only residents of the People's Republic of China would be permitted to attend the Games as spectators. On December 23, 2021, the National Hockey League and National Hockey League Players Association announced that they had agreed to withdraw their players' participation in the Games men's hockey tournament, citing concerns over COVID-19 and the need to make up games that had been postponed due to COVID-19 outbreaks. As part of their latest collective agreement with the NLPA, the NHL had agreed to accommodate a break for the Olympics and player participation for the first time since 2014. On January 17, 2022, amid increasing lockdowns across China and the first detected case of the Omicron variant in Beijing, it was announced that ticket sales to the general public were cancelled, and that limited numbers of spectators would be admitted by invitation only. These, therefore, became the second Olympics in a row that were closed to the general public. In the lead-up to the Games, organizers stated that they had aimed for at least 30% capacity at each venue, divided equally between spectators from within the closed loop, and invited guests from outside of it. At least 150,000 spectators from outside the closed loop were expected to attend. Spectators were only present at events held in Beijing and Zhangjiago. All events in Yanqing were held behind closed doors with no spectators permitted. Everyone present at the Games, including athletes, staff, and attendees, were required to use the MY2022 mobile app as part of the biosecurity protocols, which was used for submissions of customs declarations and health records for travel to the Games, daily health self-reporting, and records of COVID-19 vaccination and testing. The app also provided news and information relating to the Games, and messaging functions. Concerns raised about the security of the MY2022 app and how information collected by it would be used. Because of the strict COVID-19 protocol, some top athletes, considered to be medal contenders, were not able to travel to China after having tested positive, even if asymptomatic. The cases included Austrian ski jumper Marita Kramer, the leader of the World Cup ranking, and Russian skeletonist Nikita Tregubov, silver medalist of the 2018 Winter Olympics. Transportation. The new Beijing-Zhangjiago intercity railway opened in late 2019, starting from Beijing North Railway Station and ending at Zhangjiago Railway Station. It was built for speeds of up to 350 km per hour. With this new road system, the travel time from Beijing to Zhangjiago was decreased to around 50 minutes. A dedicated train for the Winter Olympics began to run on this line in January 2022. Featuring a mobile television studio that supports live broadcast on the train. On December 31, 2021, the Beijing subway reached the planned 783 km at the bid book. Planned before the city was awarded the rights to the Games, the Beijing Daxing International Airport opened in 2019, and due to your strategic location, it would be the main focus for the arrival and entry of delegations on Chinese soil. Chinese officials had hoped that this airport would replace Beijing Capital International Airport as the country's main hub for arrivals and departures between its opening and the Winter Games, and reduce the international and domestic demands of the older airport. This airport replaced the old Beijing Nanyuan Airport, which was out of date and was on the list of the most dangerous airports in the world because of its location, and since its opening, it has been sharing the local and international demands of the city and the country with the older Beijing Capital International Airport. However, according to the COVID-19 Pandemic Security Protocol Manual issued by BOCWAG and International Olympic Committee, all foreign delegations could only enter and leave Beijing via the Capital International Airport due to its smaller size and the fact that it is closer to the city center and Olympic Green and has specific isolation areas and a better health protocols. Budget. The original estimated budget for the Games is $3.9 billion, less than 1/10 of the $43 billion spent on the 2008 Summer Olympics. However, it was estimated that the true budget was likely more than $38.5 billion, 10 times higher than the original estimate. Ceremonies. Opening ceremony. The opening ceremony of the 2022 Winter Olympics was held on February 4, 2022 at Beijing National Stadium. Amid the political controversies and tensions impacting the Games, IOC President Thomas Bach instructed athletes to show how the world would look like if we all respect the same rules and each other, and pledged that there be no discrimination for any reason whatsoever. The final 7 torchbearers reflected multiple decades of Chinese athletes, beginning with the 1950s, and concluding with 2 skiers competing in the games: 21-year-old skier Zhao Jiayan from Shaanxi, and 20-year-old Dinigir Ulamjiang from the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. For the first time in Olympic history, the final torchbearers did not light a cauldron. Instead, they fitted the torch into the center of a large stylized snowflake, constructed from placards bearing the names of the delegations competing in the games. 3 similar snowflakes were also erected as public flames, with one outside of the stadium lit by a volunteer, one in Yanqing district lit by speed skater Yu Zhongjun, and the third in Zhangjiago lit by skier Wang Wuzhuo. Closing ceremony. The closing ceremony of the 2022 Winter Olympics was held at Beijing National Stadium on February 20, 2022. It included a cultural presentation, closing remarks, and the formal handover to Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo as hosts of the 2026 Winter Olympics. Sports. The 2022 Winter Olympics include a record 109 events over 15 disciplines and 7 sports. There are 7 new medal events, including men's and women's big air freestyle, women's monobob, mixed team competitions in freestyle skiing aerials, ski jumping, and snowboard cross, and the mixed relay in short track speed skating. Numbers in parentheses indicate the number of medal events contested in each discipline. New events. In October 2016, the International Ski Federation announced plans to begin permitting women's competitions in Nordic combined, to contest the discipline at the Olympic level for the first time in Beijing. In November 2017, a further 3 events were put forward by the FIS for possible Olympic inclusion: a ski jumping mixed team competition and men's and women's big air in freestyle skiing. At their May 2018 Congress at the Costa Navarino Resort in Messina, Greece, the FIS submitted several additional events for consideration, including a proposal to make telemark skiing an Olympic discipline for the first time in Beijing, with proposed competitions to include the men's and women's parallel sprint and a mixed team parallel sprint. The Congress also approved to submit the aerials mixed team event, and several new snowboarding events: the men and women's snowboard cross team event, a mixed team alpine parallel event, the men's and women's parallel special slalom, and a mixed team parallel special slalom event. The individual parallel special slalom events were featured at the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia, but were dropped from the Olympic program in 2018 to make way for the snowboarding big air competitions. The International Luge Federation proposed the addition of 6 new events, including natural track luge, a women's doubles competition on the artificial track, and sprint events on the artificial track. The International Skating Union continued to campaign for the addition of synchronized skating as a new event within the discipline of figure skating. The ISU also proposed a new mixed team event in short track speed skating. In biathlon, a single mixed relay was proposed by the International Biathlon Union to complement the 4-person mixed relay that featured at the 2018 Winter Olympics. Also, the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation proposed a new team event, but there was no plan to introduce a 4-woman bobsleigh event despite the recommendation from the Federation's Executive Board to propose such an event in the interests of gender equality. In July 2018, the IOC announced changes to the program for the 2022 Winter Olympics as part of a goal to increase the participation of women, and appeal to younger audiences. 7 new medal events were added, including men's and women's big air freestyle, women's monobob, mixed team competitions in freestyle skiing aerials, ski jumping, and snowboard cross, and the mixed relay in short track speed skating. Women's Nordic combined was not added. Nordic combined remains the only Winter Olympic sport only contested by men. Participating National Olympic Committees. On December 9, 2019, the World Anti-Doping Agency banned Russia from all international sport for 4 years, after the Russian government was found to have tampered with lab data that it provided to WADA in January 2019 as a condition of the Russian anti-doping agency being reinstated. As a result of the ban, WADA planned to allow individually cleared Russian athletes to take part in the 2020 Summer Olympics under a neutral banner, as instigated at the 2018 Winter Olympics, but they were not permitted to compete in team sports. WADA Compliance Review Committee head Jonathan Taylor stated that the IOC would not be able to use Olympic athletes from Russia again, as it did in 2018, emphasizing that neutral athletes cannot be portrayed as representing a specific country. Russia later filed an appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport against the WADA decision. After reviewing the case on appeal, CAR ruled on December 17, 2020 to reduce the penalty WADA had placed on Russia. Instead of banning Russia from sporting events, the ruling allowed Russia to participate in the Olympics and other international events, but for 2 years, the team cannot use the Russian name, flag, or anthem and must present themselves as neutral athlete or neutral team. The ruling does allow for team uniforms to display Russia on the uniform as well as the use of the Russian flag colors within the uniform's design, although the name should be up to equal predominance as the neutral athlete/team designation. On February 19, 2021, it was announced that Russia would compete under the acronym ROC after the name of the Russian Olympic Committee, although the name of the committee itself in full could not be used to refer to the delegation. Russia would be represented by the flag of the Russian Olympic Committee. On September 8, 2021, the IOC Executive Board suspended the Olympic Committee of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea through at least the end of 2022 for violations of the Olympic Charter, over its refusal to send athletes to the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo due to COVID-19 pandemic-related concerns. North Korean athletes would be allowed to participate under the Olympic flag. However, North Korean Ministry of Sports and the National Olympic Committee said in a letter to the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics Organizing Committee, the Chinese Olympic Committee, and the General Administration of Sport of China on January 7, 2022 that due to the action of hostile forces and the COVID-19 pandemic, they would not be able to participate in the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. In addition, the North Korean Olympic Committee said supports all the work of our comrades in China to host a grand and wonderful Olympics. The United States and its followers are plotting anti-Chinese conspiracies to obstruct the successful hosting of the Olympics, but this is an insult to the spirit of the Olympic Charter and an act to damage China's international image. We firmly oppose and reject these actions. The following 91 national Olympic committees have qualified athletes, with Haiti and Saudi Arabia making their Winter Olympic debuts. Kenya qualified 1 athlete, but withdrew. Number of athletes by National Olympic Committee: 2,871 athletes from 91 NOCs. Calendar. Competition began 2 days before the opening ceremony on February 2, and ended on February 20, 2022. Organizers went through several revisions of the schedule, and each edition needed to be approved by the IOC. All times and dates use China Standard Time. Medal table. Norway finished at the top of the medal table for the second successive Winter Olympics, winning a total of 37 medals, of which 16 were gold, setting a new record for the largest number of gold medals won at a single Winter Olympics. Germany finished second with 12 golds and 27 medals overall, and the host nation China finished third with 9 gold medals, marking their most successful performance in Winter Olympics history. The team representing the ROC ended up with the second largest number of medals won at the Games, with 32, but finished 9th on the medal table, as only 6 gold medals were won by the delegation. Traditional winter powerhouse Canada, despite having won 26 medals, only 4 of them were gold, resulting in a finish outside the top 10 in the medal table for the first time since 1988. Host nation. Podium sweeps. Marketing. Emblem. The emblem for the 2022 Winter Olympics, Winter Dream, was unveiled on December 15, 2017 at the Beijing National Aquatics Center. Designed by Lin Kunsen, the emblem is a stylized rendition of the Chinese character for winter as a multicolored ribbon, reflecting upon the landscapes of the host region. The beginning of the ribbon symbolizes an ice skater, while the end of the ribbon symbolizes a skier. The emblem carries a blue, red, and yellow color scheme. The latter two colors represent both the flag of China, and passion, youth, and vitality. Mascot. Bing Duan was the mascot of the 2022 Winter Olympics. Bing Duan was chosen from thousands of Chinese designs in 35 countries worldwide. Bing means ice in Chinese, and was meant to suggest purity and strength. Duan was meant to suggest robustness, liveliness, and youth. Bing Duan's astronaut-like clothes implied that the Winter Olympics embraced new technologies and created possibilities. Slogan. The Games' official slogan, "Together for a Shared Future," was announced on September 17, 2021. Organizers stated that the slogan was intended to reflect the power of the Games to overcome global challenges as a community. The slogan was compared in media with Chinese leader Xi Jinping's policy slogan, "Building the Common Future of Humanity." Viewership. 2.01 billion viewers were recorded. A total of 713 billion minutes of coverage was watched on various Olympic media rights partners' channels, represents an 18% increase when comparing with the last edition. Broadcasting. In China, domestic rights to these games were owned by China Central Television, with rights being sub-licensed by China Mobile's Migu streaming service. In some countries, broadcast rights to the 2022 Winter Olympics were already agreed upon through existing long-term deals. In France and the United Kingdom, these were the first games where Eurosport would be the main right shoulder. The BBC sub-licensed a limited amount of coverage on free-to-air television, as part of a deal in which the BBC sold the pay TV rights to the 2018 and 2020 games to Eurosport. In January 2022, the BBC announced it would broadcast over 300 hours of free-to-air live coverage, as well as highlights programs. The scheduling of the games impacted the U.S. broadcast rights to the Super Bowl, since this is the first time that the Super Bowl was held during the Winter Olympics, the championship game of the National Football League and historically the most watched television broadcast in the United States annually. The rights to the game rotate between CBS, Fox, and longtime Olympic broadcaster NBC, to prevent the games from competing for viewership and advertising sales with Super Bowl LVI, which was scheduled for February 13, 2022 at Los Angeles SoFi Stadium. CBS and NBC announced in March 2019 that they would invert the rights for Super Bowl LVI and LV, so that both the 2022 Winter Olympics and Super Bowl LVI would be broadcast by NBC. In a break from the established practice of airing premieres or special episodes of entertainment programs after the Super Bowl to take advantage of its large audience, NBC aired its prime-time coverage for Day 10 of the games immediately following Super Bowl LVI. Furthermore, the NFL's new media rights beginning in 2023 codifies this scenario, with all of NBC's future Super Bowl games being in Winter Olympic years. These games also confirmed an ongoing trend in U.S. viewership of the Olympics. While television viewership had seen a further decline, they were offset by increases in social media engagement and streaming viewership of the games. Similar trends were seen in Europe, where Eurosport reported an 8-fold increase in streaming viewership on its platforms in Discovery and over PyeongChang 2018. Concerns and controversies. During the bidding process, critics questioned the Beijing bid, arguing that the proposed outdoor venue sites do not have reliable snowfall in winter for snow sports. Concerns have been raised that snow may need to be transported to the venues at great cost and with uncertain environmental consequences. Additional concerns about weather conditions were raised during certain events. Swedish athlete Frida Karlsson nearly collapsed after the women's skiathlon due to low temperatures. Afterwards, the Swedes considered putting in a request for races to be moved to earlier in the day, stating that the afternoons and early evenings scheduled for European TV audiences were hurting the performance of the athletes. As with 2008, activists, human rights groups, and diplomats have made calls to boycott the Olympic Games when they are hosted by China. In the aftermath of the 2019 leak of the Xinjiang Papers, the 2019-2020 Hong Kong protests, and the Uyghur genocide, calls were made for a boycott of the 2022 Games. Because of these issues, the selection of an athlete from Xinjiang as part of the final torchbearers received a mixed reaction. In February 2021, the Chinese Communist Party-owned tabloid Global Times warned that China could seriously sanction any country that follows a boycott. In March 2021, Chinese spokesperson Guo Weimin stated that any attempt to boycott the Olympics would be doomed to fail. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi also told the EU's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell that they should attend the Games to enhance exchanges on winter sport, and to foster new highlights in bilateral cooperation. The IOC stated that it remains neutral in all global political issues and that the award of hosting the Games does not signal agreement with the host country's political or social situation or its human rights standards. The committee's response to Agence France Presse read, "We've repeatedly said it, the IOC isn't responsible for the government. It only gives the rights and opportunity for the staging of the Olympic Games. That doesn't mean we agree with all the politics, all the social or human rights issues in the country. And it doesn't mean we approve of all the human rights violations of a person or people." The statement attracted criticism, with Pacific University professor Jules Boykoff accusing the IOC of hypocrisy. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine in late February, The New York Times published a report alleging that China requested Russia to delay the invasion until after the Olympics to avoid damaging the Games' public image. Liu Pengjiu, spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington, has rejected the claims as speculations without any basis, and intended to blame, shift and smear China. The United States diplomatic boycott. The United States boycott of China's Winter Olympics was predominantly due to China's human rights issues on topics such as the abusive genocide of the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and the protest in Hong Kong in 2019. The Chinese government implemented many coercive activities in those regions, such as the re-education campus, mass detention camps, and restricted access to social media. Key event timeline. Reactions. Environmental impact. An estimated 49 million U.S. gallons of water was expected to be used to create snow at the various venues. PyeongChang, South Korea, which held the previous Winter Olympics, also had a cold but similarly arid climate that required vast quantities of artificial snow. Professor Carmen de Jong, a geographer at the University of Strasbourg, argued that these would be the most unsustainable Winter Olympics in history. The IOC stated that a series of water-conserving and recycling designs have been put into place to optimize water usage for snowmaking, human consumption, and other purposes. Artificial snow forms a harder piste compared to real snow. It is often favored by professionals for being fast and hyper-grippy, but also raises their fear of falling on it. American snowboarder Jamie Anderson compared it to pretty bulletproof ice, while her teammate Courtney Rummel compared it to the man-made snow in Wisconsin. According to Jules Boykoff, in February 2022, Beijing's electricity came largely from coal, and this coal power was what supported the construction of some Olympic venues. To offset emissions from construction and air travel, China had planted roughly 60 million trees. Sporting controversies. There were concerns about decisions and disqualification in several events during the Games. These issues included the following: an official appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport over the disqualification of 2 South Korean athletes from the men's 1,000 meters short track speed skating event filed by the Korean Sport and Olympic Committee, after having their protests rejected by the International Skating Union. Controversy surrounding a ruling of an obstruction in the 5,000 meters relay event. A potential missed call by judges during the men's snowboard slopestyle and men's halfpipe events. A ruling of a false start in the men's 500 meters speed skating event. The disqualification of racers for their uniforms during the mixed team normal hill event of ski jumping. The continued participation of a figure skater Kamila Valieva in the women's singles competition after a preliminary positive drug test from a sample 2 months prior. 3 athletes failed the doping test during the Olympics and were suspended: Iranian alpine skier Hossein Saveh Shemshaki, Ukrainian cross-country skier Valentina Kaminskaya, and Ukrainian bobsledder Lidia Hunko. The positive test of the Spanish figure skater Laura Barquero was announced after the Olympics. U.S. skater Joey Mantia alleged that South Korean skater Lee Seung-hoon made contact with him and pulled him back, preventing him from winning a bronze medal in the mass start final. Mantia lost by a 0.002 second margin. Team USA challenged the result, but Lee was awarded the bronze medal. Athlete and officials' complaints. The food and overall conditions in quarantine hotels given to athletes testing positive for COVID-19 were criticized early on. Team officials from delegations including Belgium, Germany, Poland, Finland, and the Russian Olympic Committee all brought up issues their athletes faced in quarantine hotels. Among them were the lack of internet connections, low-quality food, insufficient facilities, and no training equipment. With China's zero-COVID policy, there were issues raised about the process of quarantine at the Games. On February 2, Belgian skeleton athlete Kim Mielmans posted on social media and was in tears about the conditions she faced while in quarantine. According to Newsweek and Time, the hotel's conditions appeared to have improved after the athletes' complaints were made public. There were some complaints about the food served outside of quarantine. Germany's alpine coach Christian Schweiger called the catering extremely questionable for not having hot meals, but he echoed athletes from several nations that the food at the nearby athletes' village was great. The US and South Korean teams elected to bring their own food. Austrian skier Matthias Mayer said that Kitzbühel would have offered the best of the best, but also that a hot meal right before a race might not bring out top performances. Other complaints included low temperatures and related safety concerns. Sweden's Frida Karlsson nearly collapsed at the conclusion of the women's skiathlon cross-country race. Afterwards, her team considered requesting that races held in afternoons and evenings for European TV audiences be moved to earlier during the day. Some athletes resorted to putting tape on their faces and noses to protect them from the bitter cold. Heavy snowfall disrupted a number of competition and training events on February 13. 33 skiers did not finish their first run of the men's giant slalom. Henrik Kristoffersen of Norway said that he couldn't see shit. Switzerland's Loic Mile-Lard said, "It's not what I was hoping for, but it's part of the game. We've raced in conditions like that before."